Well, good evening, everybody.
How's it
Yeah,
going?
yeah, yeah. How's it going? Hey, this is my buddy Cory, and he's gonna talk a little bit about how we met. But basically, I shared a stage with him in Florida at Gulch Landing. It was a great experience, and I love these young cats who are out there fighting for freedom and doing those kind of things. So we had a chance to get together. He wanted to ask me some questions. I asked him if it was okay with him that I brought in my audience as well because I think they might enjoy it too. So I'm going to kind of
Yeah.
back out. It's the Cory Show, but Cory, thanks for having me on your channel.
Yeah, thank you for calling me a cat. I appreciate that. Maybe a dog is better. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I care about freedom. I care about everything that you're doing on your channel. I'm growing food in my backyard, and I've wanted to do so for a long time. We moved to Florida recently, and I've connected with so many great people and events, and that's how I met you. We met at Jim Gale's Food Forest Abundance at Galt's Landing for the Path to Freedom event. So, Path to Freedom was a great event. There's still a lot of footage that has yet to be edited and put online, but you can find some footage already if you look up Path to Freedom and Galt's Landing and Food Forest Abundance, and you'll see each of us did about 5 minutes of a speech, right? We plan to do more in the future. I mean, this is going to be a hot spot in the future. Florida, this area, Galt's Landing, 50 acres of food forest. Pay attention to it because the next couple of years it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Like, this is just the beginning. And how many speakers did we have? We had over like 20, 30 different speakers. A lot of them were doctors or people that are very well respected within like the independent media space. So it's really awesome, and it's nice to see everybody in the chat as well. Awesome to see.
Yeah, there's some good ones in there. I know, like most of these are super regulars. You know, Terminator's in the house, Life with Mike and Jen, Rock Stars from Arkansas, Big Kid, Off Grid Guy. My crooked little homestead, we call her Terminator because she does it completely off grid in Canada.
Okay.
She's
Wow.
crazy. But Hilltop, Skanes Girl, ACM, that's my buddy there. Adam, Helen, I know all of them. They're all great people.
Beautiful. Yeah, so I'm growing stuff in our backyard, and I'm new to growing to a lot of food. Right, we got over 40 something plants, and I put them in the soil. We're next to a wetlands. It's pretty good soil, so I didn't really have to build on top of the soil that much. I don't know much about permaculture and food forest, but I'm learning so much every single day by just hanging out with these people, and they have such great energy. Like, every day, I'm just like inspired and I want to do more. And I've gotten to the point where I'm meeting so many other people who are like, I don't have enough land. I want to grow stuff. And I'm thinking of maybe setting up a GoFundMe. Like, I don't ask my followers for any money. I don't have anything like that set up, but I'm thinking maybe for projects like this, we can all come together because everybody wants it and create something really special. So I'm actually looking to do something like that. And I'm holding events every single month. And we've already gotten out the door with the events down here. I've only been down here for about 7 months. And so there's a lot of energy just happening in Florida alone. And all we want to do is just replace some of the lawns with food forests and get people fed, and fed healthy, nutritious food. There's stuff like longevity spinach and cranberry hibiscus, which grows native to the Florida soil. You put it in the soil, it grows. You don't have to put any effort into it, and you can propagate it so easily. That's free. So, like, that's what's amazing to me. Longevity spinach translates to the leaf that cures over 100 diseases.
Yeah.
Like, so when I hear something like that and I tell other people that, they're like, really? I can grow this? It turns into a bush. It looks pretty. Yeah. You can replace your ornamental plants in front of your house and you can actually get something out of it. Survival, freedom, economy, environment. It helps everything. I made a video about it. I called the food forest, or like the ultimate solution. Right. And that's why Jim Gale is like, it's the solution. Now, there's other solutions I could say are the solution, right? Like talking about these freedom ideas, educating people about these ideas. I talk about philosophy a lot and morality on my channel. I think that's really core to freedom. But really, what it comes down to, both on the philosophy side of it and in growing food, is nature, returning to a sense of like, who are we? Who are we meant to be? What are we meant to do, right? And what have we been taken away from? And I think this is what we see in society as we see there's sickness and there's people with mental ailments of all kind, is we're realizing we need to return to a rather more grounded state of living. That's why people literally go on to nature and they ground, with their bare feet. I mean, it's amazing, right? But it's all coming to light, and the science is coming to back it up too, right? There's more and more new ways of growing food. There's people who set up rain barrels and all sorts of fancy ways, and it's amazing. So I'm sure some people who are watching this right now have some solutions I don't know about.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, there's some serious homesteaders in that chat.
But what I wanted to talk with Tag about, and I want you to share, is you mentioned to me that you're building freedom towns. And I mentioned to
Yeah,
you, this is really core because I studied the abolitionists from the 1800s. These were individuals who went against the world for thousands of years saying chattel slavery is not good. Let's end chattel slavery. Right now, they also recognize other forms of slavery that we're still tackling to this day that I document through my works. But for the time being, they said, look, this is physical slavery right in front of your face. This is horrible. You're doing this to your fellow humankind. Do you have any conscience or morals? And these abolitionists really nailed that point home. And at the same time, during the Underground Railroad, they built towns. It wasn't underground, it was just a bunch of towns that they set up where a lot of them were away from the government. There were towns like Modern Times that lasted about 15 years with no crime and no government.
yep,
Isn't that crazy? And they had their own currency systems. They allowed runaway slaves to stay with them. You had other towns like Hopedale Community, right? Or Fruitlands. And these were people who were also growing food and trying to get the slaves off the plantations. So I see today kind of like what we're doing is building modern day Underground Railroad towns in a sense of if we want a better system, we can create it and we can show it by example and we can bring people to it. And I see my generation, I see everybody, they go into a food forest and all of a sudden their mind and their energy, they feel inspired, like I said, right?
yeah,
And so I think instead of talking about so much of these freedom ideas, we can put it in action, and growing food is like a simple way to do it. And it's also so non-invasive. Like, who can disagree with feeding the world or healing the world? I think it's
right.
so important and essential.
And
So go ahead, share your freedom town. I want to hear about it, man.
yeah, it's such an interesting topic. I get, I'm not really sure whether I've earned it or not, but I get a lot of people commenting about, oh, I hear you got this intentional community you guys live in, and you got all of these things, and most people just simply just don't understand how it really works, and there's so much to it. But basically, I set out after my big debacle with my career. I set out and said, hey, we got to build community, and we've got to find a way to do more for ourselves. And it's funny, I come to this world kind of different than a lot of people. Most people come to this because they want to be grounded, or people come to this because they want to return to the earth, or people come to this because they want the spiritual side of it. I came to it because I was tired of the government and the systems and the state holding a carrot in front of my face, and I was tired of them having stroke and leverage over me. And I was going to change my life so I could dictate win and lose by my own accord and not by someone else's. Then the grounding and all of the other things came behind it. I mean, so I come into it a little bit different, but I set out and said, I'm going to build a town. When I talk about a town, I'm not really talking about a single pinpoint geographical location. I'm talking about a modern day Walnut Grove from Little House on the Prairie, right? Where, we come, kind of together. And so in our community, let me back up. So I don't believe intentional communities work. And
Okay.
nor would I be part of one. And that's why when you hear me speak, I always talk about our intentional neighborhood. It's not an intentional community, it's an intentional neighborhood. And because I think that there's a core principle that they miss out on, and it can be described a lot of different ways, but I think the best way is sovereignty. And how is it that we can proclaim to live free? How is it that we can take the stand and say, I'm going to go live free. Oh, by the way, here's the rules in which you have to live by. I mean, it's hypocritical, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so, here where we live, people ask me all the time, well, how many people live on your land? Well, me and my family. That's it. I'm surrounded by homesteads and like-minded people in every direction for about 150 mile radius. And we get together, one of the recent videos I put out, we helped a guy build a house, for example.
Oh, nice.
An entire brand, modern 2,500 square foot, home. And so we get together and think about how is it we as a community, right, in this non-geographical town that we've built, right? How do we help take care of each other's needs, and how do we exit the system? And I refer to that as starving the beast. I don't want to be dependent on the system in any way. So just like the house was an example, he was dependent on the system that he had to buy material, but he got it built labor free. Right. Now that's money that didn't go back into the system, and then that wasn't taxed. And then, you talk about growing food, all of us garden, all of us raise animals out here. And we do a lot of trading. I mean, I've, traded many of animals for many of animals, as time wears on. But I think it goes even further than this. Once you kind of get that root kind of established, you start thinking about communal spaces and communal property. And we do have some of those, like we all went in together and bought a excavator together. super cool, right? To dig water lines or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of building a community building here on my property that we can hold classes in Sunday school or whatever it is that comes up. There's another homestead that wants to build a library on their property, right? That we can
Beautiful.
all use and check in
Yeah.
books and do those kinds of things.
Yeah. I'd
But
love that.
yeah, the key to it, though, I'm telling you, is sovereignty. The key to it is if you have to live on someone else's land underneath someone else's rules, you cannot be free. I
Hmm.
mean, this country was founded on this principle. Personal property is such a huge thing. And at the end of the day, if I get upset at someone or we have a disagreement, I'll just go home.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we build this, we get all of this stuff going, and then we start thinking about the other things. We start talking about medical. So, we have our own medical system here. It's a direct care system. They take no insurance. We pay a fee every single month. They take care of all of our needs. And it just takes time to build that. What started as one clinic a few years ago, now there's 6 clinics across this whole corner of the state, serving way more than just our community, right? But it's a whole new medical system. It's about building your own educational system. It's about, I got here right here around me somewhere. I've got an application to serve. I've been asked to serve on the board that dictates zoning here in my county. And so we're going to make a run at some of that. We've got a county commissioner that's out of our community. If I could get 2, I would have majority. We get onto the school board. We've got some like-minded school board members on some of the local schools. If I could get majority, we could really, control. And so our community's gone from a few homesteads to really a much bigger approach of how do we create that, readout place for that people can come and, they can come here and they can be safe and we can control legislation. We can control how things run. And, if we all just, get together, and we've been pretty successful, every year. I think last year we added 6 new homesteads to the area, and it just keeps growing and just keeps growing. And I'm excited about what the future holds. I know that's the long version, but we have an intentional neighborhood. We do not have an intentional community. I guess that's what I should have just said and just left it at that, huh?
No, that sounds great. I mean, there's people who say that, right? It's like as long as you have like 5 friends or within a certain amount of miles, there's people who say that stuff all the time to me. And there's bartering networks happening down here in Florida. We're starting up so many great things. There's people who are also like building food forests together. So it's kind of like what reminds me of what you're saying, where you're building houses and stuff together. That's really cool. And, it might be something that I might want to do in my future. I might come up your way. Who knows?
Yeah.
Because I have a large future ahead of myself, and I don't know what's to come. The world can go down the drain within the next 5 years. Anything can happen at any moment. So you gotta stay kind of present nowadays. But do the best you can, and that's kind of the way I look at it. So I've gotten this big energy coming my way. I'm like, I gotta start growing stuff. I gotta start doing things, and so I am. And I think there's a lot of people who are starting to realize that too. And I've known this for a good amount of years. I'm 23. When I was 16, I fell into the political hole, and I basically started supporting candidates for presidency. I fell into the Trump energy and all the people, Ben Shapiro, Milo, and all these others, because it was very attractive for my generation at the time. Over time, since I'm a truth seeker, I've always been a truth seeker and a person who journals. I questioned even that. I questioned my belief systems. Is this just a game? Is this much more than what we think? And basically, I'm glad you see that, right? And I'm glad that I'm meeting people who see that, because there still is a vast majority of the world that still thinks that game is going to help us, when there's these real practical solutions that can help people like right away. And it's not like you have to debate. It's not like there's any division around these ideas. Again, it's like growing food, healing people. It's so basic. It's so natural and necessary. It's like I wish I was taught in school how to grow food, how to meditate, these simple things. And so it is a spiritual warfare, as Eagle says in the chat, but it's also like just a simple war in our nature, I think. And that's why my message is nature is the answer. That's where you can find my channel, Cory, Nature is the Answer. But I have several projects for people as well, not just in real life, but online. I started the real life side recently since I moved, but I've been doing a lot online, doing seminars, networking with others, teaching people how to use the technology tools, how to educate others, building networks online where people can connect with each other in real life. And I have activism sections, event sections. I have a live stream section. This is all in the liberator.us, a newspaper that I launched recently, where people can send me their article and I turn it into a video for them. I help with their production, and it's all for free. right? I'm doing this out of the moral obligation of my heart for what's going on in the world. I care about my generation. Like my generation, I look at my generation, I'm like, they're all on their phones, they're not paying attention, or they're consumed into the world that they were programmed into ultimately. And I am no exception. I always fell into that program too. It took me a week of crying and getting out of that mindset, that statist mindset that really said you have to, fall into these political games and these illusions and these ideologies. And I'm like, no, there's something much bigger, much more than that. And it's like just our humanity, right? That's what's at stake here. So it's really nice to meet and connect with other people who see that or are willing to explore it. Like Jim Gale being able to explore those ideas is great. I thought he was just a guy who grew food. And then, I meet him. He's like, no, he's doing it for freedom. That's way better than somebody at a nature preserve who's just following the state's guidelines and just, oh, I'm protecting the environment. But what about actually creating change in this world? Do you care about what's going on? Right. And overseas and all these people who are following orders, turning off their brain, turning off their conscience, doing whatever they say needs to be done. I mean, this is what World War II, not even 100 years ago, it's what happened. Like you had a bunch of people who just shut off their conscience and said, I'm going to do whatever the authority figure tells me to do. Yeah. So this is the biggest thing that I really go home and hit the nail on. I find this to be the root cause to why we aren't free. It's this statist mindset. And there's very few people who talk about it online and in many of the independent media communities, because it's much more profitable to talk about left versus right. It gets more clicks, and people like talking about that. They'd rather not talk about morality and philosophy and challenging themselves. They'd rather point the finger and blame other people. It's much easier to do that, or just cast their vote. Oh, I did all my work. I don't have to do anything else. But no, it's like, it actually takes a good amount of work to meet other people. I am afraid there's a lot of people who are like telling me, hey, I can't meet other people in my area. There's no one who thinks like me. I'm like, are you sure about that? When I was in Pennsylvania, even when in the middle of nowhere, I still connected with people.
Oh, yeah. They're everywhere.
It's like, hey, the Libercast is here. How's it going? He's from in one of my networks.
Oh, cool. So, hey, yes. How are you?
Yeah, he's got a lot of great podcasts and stuff. He's always got a bunch of guests. He's on like, what, 1,000th episode? It's a great guy. Cool. Yeah, he's really good. But yeah, there's people like the Libercast who are producing so much content. There's a lot of people behind the scenes who are doing such great things. And I think people should be aware of those, because a lot of these people are in your area. You said you're like, there's people in Canada, like the Libercast. He's from Canada. He's like, where are the people near me? I'm like, there's people everywhere. You just got to find them. I think setting up a flyer, setting up an event on a meetup.com, eventbrite.com, higher side chats. There's a bunch. There's Telegram channels for different states and different areas. Then you can also connect with local businesses and businesses that are oriented toward freedom ideas. And you can connect with them. You can do an event there. They can advertise for you. There's so much that could be done. And
but I think the thing is those people got to get up and you got to put intention behind the things that you do, because it ain't going to do itself. I mean, but I get email after email after email of people to say, hey, I can't find anybody. And I ask them, what are you doing? And they're like, nothing. Well, that's why you can't find anybody. I mean, this is not complicated, right? You got to be willing to put yourself out there, and you got to be willing to take a stand and say, hey, you do have a choice. Because at the end of the day, we have a choice. We can live the life that we want to live. Yeah. I understand that it's scary. And, when I lost my career, I decided that never again was I going to go through that I was going to control it the rest of the way. And now we live 100% off grid and do it all for ourselves. And it's a pretty good life.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, and I'm getting there step by step within our communities that we're building here. We're in an HOA community, but like they really don't care what we're doing. And also we have like the whole neighborhood on our side of growing food and doing things that eventually I would hope that maybe the HOAs can help spread this message, help share what we're doing, rather than being a hindrance on what we're doing. I've heard of HOAs in Florida that are like, you can't grow more than 2 plants or 2 fruit trees. I'm like, what? Like, why? Right? Like, what's the point of that? How does that help people? It's like, oh, I'm going to get rats. I'm going to get mice. I'm like these excuses people use to take away something so basic and essential for our living and our survival. Like, did they not pay attention to COVID when all the shelves were empty in certain times of the year? I mean, that should alarm people. That was like a wake up call for some people to say like, oh my gosh, not because of the toilet paper was gone, but because some of the food items were gone, and how much are we reliant on other countries?
We have a choice.
Yeah.
That's the thing. At the end of the day, you can choose to live in the HOA or not. You can choose to be in the system or not. You can make the fundamental choice to change your life. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's expensive. Yes, it's scary. And I said this in my speech in Florida where you and I met. that the lion in the Serengeti is free, but he fights for his life every day. The lion in the zoo is safe, but he ain't got no choices. And which one you want to be? You know, I want to be the lion in the Serengeti. Bring it on. I'll take care of it myself. But we have choices. We don't have to put up with that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you know this or not, but no is a complete sentence.
No is the lost word. And we talk about something in natural law, which is like a natural moral law. A lot of people talk about this in the communities that I'm in. No is this lost word because there's a lot of people who just say, yes, I'll do what you say, authority figure. But the minute they say no, they take away that person's authority and they claim it for themselves. They say, I own myself. I get to choose what to do with my own body, you know? And so simple ownership, self-ownership. And self-ownership also implies voluntary interaction, you know, like you just said, coming together, communities of people without violence saying, I'm going to do something. And if that's the world we want to create, because the governments are all based on violence and everything they do is backed by violence, then we are quite literally creating the solution and the change that we want to see in the world. We're coming together, creating voluntary hierarchies, you know, and there's nothing wrong with voluntary hierarchies. They exist everywhere. They help us create so much. This is the market. This is people coming together for what they want, and there's no coercion. If somebody doesn't like it, like you said, they can just leave. Yeah, so
complicated.
it's very simple. But this gets so complicated with all this political terminology and ideology, even in philosophy, right? And these complications take away some of these most basic, essential needs that you have in humanity for thousands of years. I'd say everything is being challenged. You have gender being challenged, right? Your biology being challenged. Everything's being challenged now because we've really, really questioned our nature and have affected our nature to that deepest level. Like that's why, again, my message is nature is the answer. I really apply that to everything, not just growing food, not just politics, but also health and diet and you know, are you eating processed food or are you eating natural food? And is it really? Because even when you grow a carrot for yourself or you're growing kale, where did that plant come from? Did our ancestors eat it? I mean, these are just questions, right? To ask, how far back do we want to go? Do we want to really understand why we are how we are, what we do? Because these are the things that really got me into a philosopher mindset naturally.
You know, I think just taking control of your own life is a big issue. And I think, you know, you want to know who you are, take control of your own life because it ain't easy. Right. And if you actually do it, like, I talk to so many people who say, you know, there was a comment in here earlier, right here. I'll put it up there. 2JAM 113 says, I guess one needs some capital to live off grid. And, you know, I get lots of, you know, comments like this, and all it is one step in front of the other. You know, people, and I get this a lot, you know, people are like, oh my goodness, you know, it must be, you know, nice to, you know, live off grid. But the fact of the matter is, you know, when I moved out here to this property, we showered outside because I didn't have the plumbing in. Right. You make sacrifices to live the life you want to live, and you go small if you have to go small, or just whatever it is. But we, at the end of the day, we have a choice. We can dictate it. And, you know, people say they would love to have land. Hook up with a homesteader that's already got land.
Yeah.
That's
the thing, right?
Be an intern for 3 years. Live in a camper. It's not going to kill you. I promise you. You actually might learn something.
That's what I'm doing right now. I'm connecting with a bunch of people before I start asking for like money or anything like that from my followers, which like I said to you, I don't really ever do. But it would just be to set up these projects and it'd be completely transparent. I'm going to be talking to all the people who already are like, I want to do it. Because if we bring all these people together, I think people matter a lot more than money. Because if you want something done, you can get it done with enough people. That's at least my view of it, the way I've seen it. That's how Jim Gale started. He started out, he said he had nothing and he went like bankrupt. And he also built his entire food forest on sand. So for anybody saying you can't do it in the environment, you know, so it's like, if you want to do something, you can do it, especially in the 21st century when you have just mass amounts of media in front of your face. I mean, we can do it. And like you said, it's probably more so just the effort. But I do say, and I said this in my speech a little bit at Galt's Landing, I said, once you open the door, the floodgates start coming in, right? Like you started this channel. Now you have people coming to you and I came to you and people referring me to your channel and you didn't do anything, right? You were just producing content as you normally do. But because the word gets around, now people start coming to you. You instead don't have to look for them. And that's how I've had it in my experience too. Just by opening myself up and being there, people start coming to you. So you just have to take that first starter steps, right? Like Buddha says, starting and then going all the way. just starting can make a big difference. I mean, because people are fearful of starting or they don't know how to start. Just do it.
And, but I tell people in our community all the time that I need everyone to be willing to do their part plus a little bit.
Hmm.
If everybody's willing to do that, we can absolutely get it done. I mean, I gave you the example of the guy we built the house for. When it's said and done, he's going to be in that house for half of what it would cost him. Half. You talk about not having resources and it's hard to get resources. Well, that's one way. You can fight the front side money or the backside money argument. They chose, to fight the backside money argument, and look where they are. They have a homestead. It's paid for. They're building out of their pocket every week as cheap as they can build, and they're in great shape, as a lot of people are. You can absolutely do it. It just has to be a priority. It has to be more important than Starbucks. It has to be more important than other things. That has to be the primary goal. What you sink your teeth into every day is, I'm going to go live freer today than I did yesterday, and they can't stop me. Period.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guarantee you, somebody who feels like they're alone or that they're struggling and other people are having success, you're not the only one. Like, that's another thing too. It's like, if you feel a certain way, there's definitely someone else who feels the same way as you.
Yep.
So there's another reason to not put yourself down, because that's not going to help you achieve anything. I think, you can look at Jim Gale and look at his energy. He's always positive. His team, they're like a family. They work together. They're always positive. I told them about some of my plans and they're like, don't worry about the money. If we want to do it, we can do it. Like, I was like, this is incredible, right? And this is why these people are where they are. It's like, maybe it's like a cheesy spiritual new age type of thing, like manifest what you want. But no, there's action involved and there's also intent involved. There's both, right? You don't have one without the other.
No,
like,
and you have to get up and do something.
Yes.
You have to get up and do something. You cannot sit on your couch or on the internet and say, hey, someday it's going to come for me. Mm-hmm. Happiness, you guys, is built. It's not found. It's not discovered. There's no such thing. It's built. Period. You just got to be willing to go build it.
There's a common expression, I want to be happy. Get rid of the I, that's ego, want, and desire. And then you just have happiness.
That's right. That's right. Yep. I tell people all the time, this journey of freedom is not a destination.
It's given. That's right. You're breaking down barriers, and then you're simply embracing it, which means, like, if somebody's like, I want to live off grid, it's like, do you look outside, like outside, right? This word outside, it's in our simple terminology. It's our simple way of, like, expectations and attachments. If we let go of our attachments and our expectations of what it's supposed to be, off grid is everywhere if you know how to live within nature.
That's right.
And I admit, I wasn't taught that type of stuff.
Yeah.
I have to delve back into it.
That, right?
Yeah.
We're programmed early.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Early. But I hope people get hope from conversations between you and me, because I'm telling you guys, when I went to go do it and I decided that I was not going to be part of the system anymore, I didn't know anything about solar. I didn't know anything about most of it. I just had to go figure it out and put one foot in front of the other and make some mistakes and learn from them. Right. And then, continue on until, here we are today. And I live you don't know this about me, Cory, but I live in a 5,000 square foot home. Right. I mean, I don't live in a little house, and it's all off grid and life's grand, but I had to build it, and I'm still building it. And it's been at it, for 4 years now. And, you get up early in the morning and I work all day long till someone is cool enough to call me and say, hey, let's do a video, Cory. And then I get to get out of the work, But you can do it, you guys. For you guys out there listening, I'm telling you, you can absolutely do it. You just got to put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
Promise.
Well, thank you. I mean, you help motivate me too, just by putting out your content and doing what you're doing. I think just by showing by example, that's another thing too. You get free content out of it. I mean, I would encourage anybody here, whatever they're doing, film it. I have a channel. I have over 1,000 videos now. I've been producing content for the past 3 years. And my first videos, no, they weren't good, because I was beginning, I was experimenting, and now I'm way more professional just by doing it. It's like, people ask me all these tips. It's like, you're overthinking it. Just do it. Start doing it. Over time, you'll critique yourself. You're always going to be your own worst judge, but over time, you're going to do better if you just start doing it. And people are fearful. They're like, I don't know if this is good enough. I don't know if I can do it. It's like, I just put trees in the ground and I said, I don't know what I was doing, but they're growing. It's like, if I pay attention to the tree and I listen to the tree and I use my online resources, I don't have to be the expert at permaculture or food forest, and they're still growing. They're still doing good.
Yeah. Well, Mike and Jen said failure is part of success. And I wanted to point this out because, guys, I promise you, there's not a single thing that you use today, whether it's your cell phone, the microphone, the TV, the app that you're watching this on, the food that you're eating, none of it came without mistakes and failures first. None of it.
Yeah.
They had to fail to learn the right recipe. It's just the way it works. So embrace it, man. It's cool. I'm like, man, I'm glad I learned I don't have to do it like that again. That didn't work.
Yeah, some people are fearful of technology too, and I can understand them for that. But that's another thing, like electric cars, self-driving cars. We're scared of it, but the reality is too is there's going to be a time and day where people are going to be perfectly fine with it. The question is more so, what are we losing in that process? Is there any part of our humanity, part of our nature that we're losing for taking on such a convenience? Right? We make a faster life where we can go place to place and yet we feel less connected. We make social media and yet we feel more antisocial.
Yes.
We make more food to feed people, but yet we have more disease. Pretty much everything we think we should do is pretty much the opposite. And this is why, we have conversations like this and why there's truthers and conspiracy theorists. They wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the lack of transparency, the lack of honesty within the system. And it's just that simple. You can expect it. If you have a system set up to have such privacy, you're going to have people spreading rumors. You're going to have, it's just natural, right? You start to see this just makes sense. We are in this state of condition because of our mass mind. It's not because of the one person in power. It's because of everybody's minds and their actions and what they do on a day-to-day basis. Is everybody going by the streets and judging people's lawns and saying, why aren't they growing food? Well, so far, I'm one of the only people doing that in Florida. And there's a bunch of others. There's thousands now. And it's growing exponentially every single year. But most people will just drive right by that lawn and say, oh, maybe that's a nice lawn. They won't even think about turning it into a food forest. And maybe they'll spend so much time and money on that lawn when they could instead be putting it into something like that would help so many people.
Yeah, and it's about being intentional. It's like I said before.
That's consciousness.
You have to. And it's so interesting learning, Cory, like when you and I chit chat, learning your language, the way you say something, because just like what you said, it's consciousness. When I say it's intentional, same thing, right?
Yes.
But it's super, super cool. But yeah, it's just about being intentional. And I tell anybody, if I can do it, you can absolutely 100% do it. If Cory can do it, you can absolutely do it. And I'm excited that there's young people getting involved in it. I mean, look at this gray hair, right? And we need you young guys to lead the way.
One of my biggest plans.
Old guys are getting old.
One of my plans, I actually want to get involved with the universities down here and start talking to a lot of people my age because I really want to. And I've always been curious, how can I do this, right? Without getting kicked off campus. And I really think that growing food is maybe something that they may not be opposed to. Because like I said, it's very non-invasive. And does it have to do with freedom? Yes. Am I probably going to still get into freedom-like ideas? Probably. But you know what? I don't have to force it. It would come upon on its own. And that's the thing, too. I tell people, because I talk about the ancient Chinese philosophy of Taoism, this idea of letting go and not forcing things. Like if you want to convince somebody that something is truthful, instead of just telling them, oh, you need to know this, and this is so important, and there's going to be a zombie apocalypse and overwhelming them, which we tend to do, we can ask questions. And we can get them curious, think about it for themselves, the same way a practitioner would help with their client or their patient in healing themselves by themselves, by educating them and helping them rather than imposing upon them and telling them what to do. It's the same practice in medicine as it is in healing the worldview of people and their minds, I would say. It's being able to cultivate and guide and coach an individual rather than impose. Like if you're saying there's all these imposing and dictating systems upon them, it doesn't help for you to be imposing and dictating upon them. That's the truth. It's just going to draw more people away. There's a lot of people who have a difficulty with this. And again, myself included, but over the years, I've been able to talk to more people. And as I met more people in real life, this became easier and easier to where I can approach anyone and I could just sympathize with them, understand where they currently are before I start throwing a bunch of words at their face.
Yeah. Well, I think everyone will come to the truth at some point. The question is when, right? And how far along does it have to go? How much do they have to hurt?
Yes.
Before they wake up. And I mean, for me, it took me losing my career, but I had to look at it and say, that everything I knew was a lie. It's just simply not true.
What was your career, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. So I ran financial holding companies. And I had two of those, two insurance companies, two marketing companies, an investment company, a couple agencies, about 900 employees. And they asked me to mandate the jab and I told them no. And that ended my career.
Darn.
That's what started my whole journey.
Oh my gosh. Ask Cory if he knows how to eat elephant. Nice question.
Cory, do you know how to eat an elephant?
No, I haven't. I should try.
One bite at a time.
So
Yeah.
that's a good
So
joke. Darn it.
it's funny how, it's one of my good friends, Grumpy from Grumpy Acres. He always told me that, that things aren't going to change until the NASCAR dads and the soccer moms feel it. And,
Hmm.
that we got to get to that point. And I totally agree with him. My time came earlier because of a career issue, but I
Yeah.
think people are waking up more and more. And I think we can help them by being encouraging and by being those kind of things, not calling people stupid and not doing those kind of things. They're
Yeah.
going to get there.
Yeah.
They're going to get there.
Yeah. Exactly. That's why I keep referring back to my own journey and experience too, because that helps
Mhm.
people
Yeah.
sympathize wherever they are. It's like I was one of you. I had a statist mindset, so I don't go around saying you're a statist, you're this, you're that. Like I don't go around telling people labels, right? It's
Right.
like it's just a mindset that they have, and there's certain actions they partake in. And if you look at the world through actions and mindsets, you don't really judge the person. You judge what they do and who they are, and you can sympathize and say, well, is there really any bad people in the world, or is it just bad actions and
Mhm.
bad behavior and all this stuff that is also mostly programmed into them at a young
Mhm.
age? And you can't blame them necessarily for the system and the way things are. Like somebody steals something, yeah, I'm against theft, but can you blame them in the system like now? It's like it doesn't excuse theft, but it also helps us understand people are going to be people, and people are always going to have these bad behaviors. The question is, how do we continue and grow that bad behavior?
Mhm.
That can only happen when we have a statist mindset, which is one that allows or legitimates
Mhm.
violence, one that allows and people to be evil, allow evil to grow. Essentially, that's World War II. A billion people saying, "Yeah, let's bring these people to the concentration camps." It's like if one person says jump off a cliff, and like it doesn't matter. Like you don't have to listen to him. You can totally choose not to do that. And if everybody says, "Yeah, let's do it," then yeah, it's going to happen, and there's going to be mass casualty.
Mhm.
It's just common sense, right? But this idea of common sense, which is also called conscience, to know together, consciere in Latin, it's people feel like it's lost and they wonder why. It's because we've lost a sense of right and wrong. We've lost a sense of understanding when to say no, when to return to nature, when to return to ourselves. We've given so much power to these people that we don't know. And even if we think we know them because they sound good, they look good,
Mhm.
like who are they, right? Are we not equals? Are we not all human beings? And if they want to create change, why can't they do so voluntarily, like you're doing with bringing people together? Why do they need violence to make their ideas happen? If their ideas are so great, what makes violence necessary? It's
Well, it's
like,
because without violence, they couldn't make it happen because their ideas aren't that great.
yeah. And
I mean,
so, and then like you'll have a bunch of people like veterans who come back from war and they're like, why'd I do that? Like, oh man, I killed these people. Now I have depression and anxiety. It's like, you turned off your brain, you turned off your conscience, you were programmed into to be a soldier, to be an order follower. It's like no wonder, right? So yeah, I'm trying to prevent that. To me, this is the biggest elephant in the room that needs to be addressed, is that mindset of I'm just gonna take away my humanity and be a robot. And as we head into a robotic world, it's like we still are the most dangerous robots, not the actual robots. It's us. We're the ones who, if anything, made the robots, so we can
Mhm.
tell the robots what to do. And we have this thing called natural intelligence, which is far more important and powerful than artificial intelligence. I talk about that too quite a bit. But I know people were curious about what I meant by status, so I hope I clarified on that a little bit. I have documentaries where I compile some of the best freedom videos that, if you've never seen on the internet, I've compiled it all. It's about 3 hours long, and it's like a bunch of animations and really good videos. So be sure to check it out. It's
Mhm.
called the best freedom videos compilation. It's like the trailer on my channel, so you'll see it right away.
Yeah, there's some good stuff over there. I've tried to work through some of it, but there's a lot. So it's going to take a 3 month commitment, to watch it all. But it's good. It
Yeah, I
seems.
mean, you watch any one of them, you'll get the point,
Oh yeah.
because I really do share that root cause in a lot of my videos. It's like I can sum it up in a minute. I can sum it up in 30 seconds. That's why recently I launched a 1 minute challenge. Anybody in the chat, anybody right now can send me a 1 minute video, and it'll be part of a compilation series that I'm creating called the Liberator 2 Showcase. So if you're a content creator, you can also share your links, you can share what you do, and this is a way for everybody to show their work in 1 minute, so everybody's attention span will hopefully last. I could post on TikTok, I could post it on Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. 1 minute is now the current norm of media. So I'm trying to help people get used to that type of media, and it's very simple. You can record it on any camera, and I'll do the editing for you. You can send it to me, and you can go to deliberator.us. You'll find the announcement at the top. Talks about it.
Yeah, hey, Cory, you talk a lot about peace, and you talk a lot about, you know, that the call for violence and, you know, those kind of things. And I'm just curious how you feel about someone's reaction to someone else removing their constitutional rights or someone else removing their liberties, you know, because I believe, and I don't know how you feel about this. And if we disagree, Cory, it's cool, bud. We're friends.
Okay.
It's fine. But I believe I have a right and a duty to defend myself and my family from someone who's going to remove any of my rights, my freedoms,
Sure.
my life, my liberty, or my pursuit of happiness. And just, I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah. I mean, so in the natural law community, we call that the principle of self-defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the principle of non-aggression. So you have like this left brain action-oriented part of it, which is the principle of self-defense. If somebody initiates violence against you, you can use retaliatory force to prevent that aggression from occurring. And then the non-aggression principle is more of that right brain, intuitive, feminine side of things. That is the non-aggression principle. Do not initiate violence against anyone. So it's basically preventing violence in any form. So violence is differentiated from force. Force is just power, energy, anything that you're putting force into, but it doesn't necessarily equate to violence. Violence means a violation of rights, as you said in your case. So that's one differentiation that's made. I also talk about, however, in my videos and some of my content, the value of non-resistance or non-violent resistance, as has been used throughout history by individuals like Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King Jr. These are individuals that were able to create change without even using self-defense.
Yeah.
So there is a value in both. It's about recognizing both of these, because many people might be very strong on saying, well, I need to use a gun, I need to defend myself in every case, but maybe not every case, right? Doesn't mean though that we ban all the guns just because we say it's not every case. And the same thing is like we shouldn't say that everybody should have guns just because that's the case, right? It's about recognizing when to apply the right action at the right time. And that goes for anything in this life.
Okay, so I got a very interesting question for you. So then who decides?
Well, you, right? If you own your own property, you can choose how to defend your own property as long as you don't violently aggress upon anyone else, peacefully living their life, having their own property.
So, but when you talk about how you said that, this is fascinating to me. You said some people should have guns, some people shouldn't. Who gets to decide?
No, I'm saying that's that idea. I've never said people should decide that for others. Never. I was probably I was probably making a scenario. Maybe you lost me in the context, but
probably I am old, you know.
Yeah, my way of words is sometimes a little out there for a little bit, because I have a certain way of writing. I'm kind of poetic in a lot of my writings, so I don't usually use typical English language. but I was saying that if you don't want to use a gun, that's fine. It's about knowing when to apply guns and when not to. But nobody should tell others what to do with their own life and property. No, absolutely not. And guns is one of those forms of property, you know, and that helps you defend other forms of property. But it's just, is it to always be used every time? Maybe not, right? And this is where you study Martin Luther King Jr. and Mahatma Gandhi and even the abolitionists. A lot of them were pacifists. And a lot of people didn't like that, but you know what? It strengthened their moral cause, because it's easy for the media to say, look at these violent abolitionists who want to end slavery. And they literally did that. The media attacked them and said, look at their violence. They blamed them for burning down houses. This is very public. Anybody can look this up. And it's like the abolitionists were like super peaceful people. So it really strengthened their cause when the media would just expose themselves. And that's literally what happens. It's like, if the violent person comes to you and you're like, I'm just gonna stand my ground, and I'm not gonna even defend myself. I'm just gonna be completely vulnerable. It can actually make quite a big demonstration. And so we've used biblical quotes as well to support this argument. And we've have different religious texts of all kinds that support this argument. And I have a whole series on this also from Dr. Carl Jung and his psychology about this. So there is a value in non-resistance. Like, for instance, Mahatma Gandhi was like, I'll willingly go to jail. And he did. And he overwhelmed the jail because there were so many people who were willing to go to jail that they ended up having to make a compromise with him. And because all these people now are like, why are we putting all these people in jail that don't deserve to be in jail? The system just fell apart on its own. So
Right.
it's like, depending on how you look at it, there are several different ways you can approach this scenario. And I want people to bear in mind that is a possible solution. It's approaching things from a totally non-resistance point of view.
Well, I think choice is what matters, right? Is that you can have the choice to
Yes,
go at whatever problem in any way. I mean, that's what
absolutely.
freedom is. I mean, we started this conversation with sovereignty,
Hmm.
right? And to me, sovereignty is the right to your property, and sovereignty is the right to protect your property, and sovereignty is the right to protect yourself more importantly than anything. But I 100% agree with you, and I've told anybody in this chat, at least on my side, will have heard me say this, that I think peaceful civil disobedience is a duty.
Yeah.
I think it is 100% duty, and we should be doing it every single day at every opportunity we get right now, because I think we can make a dent through that. Because at the end of the day, taking up arms is never going to work. It doesn't matter,
Hmm.
right? I mean, we have to go at it the other way. But
Yeah. We can try making all the justifications like, oh, look how much they've hurt us. So that justifies us taking arms to them. It's
right,
like we'll make justifications in scenarios where it's like collective and common good and greater good. That's where it goes wrong. But an
right,
individual defending their own house, their own property, I mean,
yep,
it's very basic, and any animal in the wild would defend themselves too. Right. So it's just about using our higher minds, recognize when we're in mass, like we don't necessarily want to use violence, because it's like, who
no,
did it? you
no.
know?
Well,
um,
and I was a soldier, and
mm,
I would much rather just live my life peacefully in my house with my snow bunny in front of the fireplace. My life, that's where my life is its best.
yeah.
Um, and so, Life Mike and Jen talked about similar to the Velvet Revolution, very similar actually.
Mm.
I don't know if you studied that at all, but
No, I haven't.
if you haven't, Google it, the Velvet Revolution. It's interesting because it's a lot about what you're talking about right there, that went
Got you.
on. But yeah, but pretty cool. But hey, we wanted to talk a little bit about solutions tonight, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, we talked about like you're building like your own freedom towns, and then I mentioned some of the abolitionists, because to me, they kind of are my main operation of like how do we create action in this
Mhm.
world. I think they really demonstrated it back in the 1800s. I truly believe that. I've
Mhm.
studied their works in detail. You had people who were helping people escape the jails at the time that didn't deserve to be
Mhm.
in the jails. You had people growing food. You had people doing everything that's being done right now, and they were also censored. So it's
Yeah.
like they didn't have technology back then. They were still getting censored by the media. The same way the anti-federalists were getting censored back in, founding fathers days for saying the Constitution will grow the government. So like the
Right.
same thing is happening. And I'm thinking, okay, well, what if we can look at history and we can learn from these events? But even better, we have this moral evolution that is happening in humanity. And I think we need to continue that. So like we ended slavery after thousands of years. We ended monarchy after thousands of years. We're moving more toward individualism, more toward freedom, and I see this as a continual progression. And I think that's like we're kind of fulfilling a destiny. That's kind of how it feels to me,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it's
Uh,
interesting, though, don't you think, though, that even as you move closer and closer to that, you still need commerce. Commerce still has to exist,
mhm.
because I don't know about you, but I don't know anybody that has a salt mine, a sugar plantation, a sawmill, a way to make their own oil filters and gasoline. I don't know anybody who can check all of those 5 boxes. Nobody.
Mm.
So, I mean, you still have to have some kind of commerce along the way, right?
Yeah, well, again, this is part of building our voluntary associations. There's people who are building all sorts of things. Also in Mexico, you have a Narco Poco. That event happens every year. I
Mhm.
think our Florida events are going to grow bigger than that. That's just my personal projection. Uh, but that's great to see. We should have events everywhere. We should have places where we can meet people everywhere, and eventually, then it just spreads like rapid fire.
Mhm.
And that's what we're planning with the food forest down here. It's already growing exponentially. Same thing with these voluntarist ideas of a voluntary free world.
Mhm.
They're growing so rapidly. It's just a matter of time for it to just pop off more than it already has. So yeah, slavery still exists. Absolutely. That's my main point when talking about the abolitionists. They warned us about that. They were like, hey, there's something called political slavery. There's mental slavery, which is the most dangerous form. And this is not something that can just go away instantly. And also, you can't just write it down on a piece of paper and say slavery is illegal and therefore it's gone. Like, no, it still exists and in different forms. The most dangerous being the form that we actually consent to and allow, enslaving ourselves in many ways. We don't understand how that works. That's the mental slavery. And I just equate that straight up to statism, which I summarize very, very precisely on the liberator.us. Like I have an action page and a learn page. So you have both. The action page involves the food forest and involves community building. It also involves some quotes from Leo Tolstoy. who is also another individual who studied the abolitionists like me. He is a very prolific writer. He's known as like one of the greatest writers of all time.
Hmm.
And if anybody knows who Leo Tolstoy is, he was also like a voluntarist. He thought
Hmm.
all interactions between people should be voluntary. You shouldn't have this violence and coercion in the
Hmm.
world. So many
Hmm.
people read his writings, they don't even know that's what he actually thinks. But he also said, you know how we get out of the system? It's not by violence, it's by just teaching people who they are, what they're meant to be, really in the sense of like what they want to be.
Hmm.
And just recognizing like what are their true wants. Like, do they really want to be under this system? No, they want to be in prosperity.
Hmm.
People want a better system. Like people, yeah, it's much easier to just do nothing, but you know it's even easier when you have a community of people that can support you, make you feel healthy, make you feel better. I
Hmm.
think it starts to become easy, like I said to you, once you open the door and you
Hmm.
invite those people in your life. I'm surrounded by people all the time that now think like me in the
Hmm.
sense of, wanting to create community and healthy living. Now, I also recognize I don't want to fall into an echo chamber and just only think of about what people I'm associated with think about. But yeah, it's all about creating that community. And to me, that's the biggest thing. So Leo Tolstoy said, stop being a tax collector, stop being a soldier, stop being anything that participates with violence whatsoever. Stop and start going toward the voluntary solutions. That was his solution. And I totally agree with that. So
Hmm.
that opens up the door to so many different solutions, and not just voting for someone in office or passing a new law. No, that legitimizes the system. That legitimizes violence. Doesn't matter what law it is. If it's something so natural and essential and moral, it doesn't need to be written down. It's like, this is what's right. It's like the paper does not make it right. If it's right, it's right. So why does it help to have it in a piece of paper? Well, the piece of paper reminds us, okay, then it's just a recommendation. It's a guideline, right? But a law is something that you have to comply with. You have no choice but to follow. That's why they're all backed by violence. So there's no such thing as a voluntary law unless you want to say it's common law, some people will say, or natural law, right?
Hmm.
That's a voluntary law, but yeah, that's why people aren't following it, right? But that's the thing. When we do follow it, we don't need these involuntary laws. But it's all then about understanding then what is voluntary and involuntary, what is violence and what is not. So to me, that's the solution right there. That covers everything. Now, if you want to go more into detail, what currency do we use? What plants do we grow? What buildings do we use? You probably know more about that than me.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I just know that, and like there's some comments in there about, we could just trade, but the problem is that's super impractical. And at the end of the day, what I can grow because you like to use food as the example, what I can grow here in Kansas where I live is very different than what you grow there in Florida,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, at some point we were going to have to work out commerce,
Hmm.
and I mean, at some point, right now, I think you can have legislation, for lack of a better word, on small parts of life without having to give up sovereignty in your own personal life.
Hmm.
Right. I mean, I think we can get to that point, which is these are things I think about all the time because our community's grown to a level to where I have to really start thinking all the time about how do we take this to the next level? Because what
Yeah.
we're doing is working great, but I'm telling you, we've got homesteads all over here. We're not going to go hungry. We're raising everything everywhere. All of that's perfectly fine. But at the end of the day, we talk about off grid, and a lot of people don't understand what that means, but it's not off matrix. I still need to buy an oil filter if I want to drive a car. Right. I mean, I do. So at some point, we still have to work that in there somehow. And I don't know what the answer totally is. This is something that I struggle with.
You know what I think it is to
Hmm.
some extent is creating a movement. And that sounds like a scary word to some people. It's like, oh, I have to identify with an identity or a word. Not necessarily. But like, let's say, for instance, you look at the abolitionists, they were all on the same page. They all were anti-slavery. They had anti-slavery meetings everywhere. They had anti-slavery towns. You had a movement, even though it wasn't an official movement. See, I think that's where the change is going to happen. You have a trending hashtag on Twitter, you have trending terms and flags and symbolism that does bring in more people and more attention, but you don't just have one, right? You have different types and different,
Hmm.
um, all voluntary, different types of organizations coming together. So you have the food forest community. I call it that. I call it the natural law community. I call it that. And I think they're all movements of their own. Which one do I think will persist and last? I think the voluntarist community because it binds all of them. It brings them all together, right? So it's like being able to see the bigger picture and what really brings us all together. Is it freedom? Is it nature? That's why I created Nature is the Answer and why I made it a movement.
Hmm.
To me, I felt like a movement was necessary to make the ideas and the people and their actions more impactful. So that's my personal point of view. I think a movement might be necessary, but the way we approach said movement is not necessarily the same as we think, like in history or what that
Mhm.
movement's supposed to do. Like we're supposed to get this new person in office and cause a civil war. No, it's more so like just educate people and use the movement as a way to share the message.
Yeah, I think it's a big decentralized movement. I think it's a
Hmm.
big, some very core principles about, hey, you know what, we're tired of living in slavery, which in my opinion, we're living in the most expansive example of slavery ever in the history of the world, ever. And brought on by the central banking systems, brought on by debt, brought on by easy money, brought on by, I can go on and on and on and on, but you know what I'm talking
Right.
about.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so I think it's a decentralized movement issue where the community, the town, whatever you want to call it, that I live in, we do things a particular way. There's no laws, there's no rules, there's nothing, nobody signs anything. It's not that, but and I think you get a whole bunch of those, although there's many differences. If we can come together and realize there's much more that unites us than what divides us, and that we can unite on the idea that a human being is a sovereign human being,
Yeah.
and they have the same value as any other human being, although we're not equal, they do have the same value. And
Yes.
I think we can come together on that. And I think we can create that decentralized movement. And I think we can make a difference, but it's going to
Yes.
take a lot of us.
Yeah, and again, it's more so like kind of letting go. Like someone just said, I want no centralized system. I
Mhm.
agree. Like, can any one human being tell the rest of the world how to live their own lives and how the world should be structured? That would make them God. Like that would put them above human level. And no human really has a perfect structure. There is no such thing. It can't be universal and timeless. You can try to create some sort of structure on your own, even voluntary, and it's not going to last forever. So, to do it violently, it's even worse. It's like you're forcing it to happen. You're trying to force nature's will. And nature does not want to be put in a box. I talk about this in Taoism too, because the ancient philosophy says, hey, be like water and learn how to flow with nature, not with society. Don't flow and follow orders in society. Follow nature. It's like following God if you're religious or, have any other higher power higher than man. You would see and say, wait, man is not supposed to rule over his fellow man. Man is supposed to respect them as an equal. And therefore, all these systems we create, they're all illusions and they're all just going to put us in boxes that are going to affect us. So you can look up Alan Watts, he's a prominent speaker. Some of you guys might know him. He's kind of like a David Icke back then.
Mhm.
And, he talks about a lot of spiritual concepts, but he talks about that, how we're always building boxes. Even our houses are built in boxes. And we're finding out all this stuff about people building pyramids and what it does and people building in certain fashions. We've lost all that. We've lost our ancient technology, our ancient wisdom. But we can think about all the complexities and we can think about all these little things. I think it's all theorizing, right? And you can't predict the future. You can't predict what's exactly going to happen. Oh, what if this happens? It's hard to really know. So people claiming that they know, I don't think they really do know. But
Mhm.
at least they're thinking about it. But um, what's so simple, right? Do not steal. Elliot James says, yeah, it's like the simple golden rule: do unto others, right? The simple things. Stand on the basics. Stand on the universal basics. That's where I come from with this position. And again, that's more unifying. That's how you unify rather than divide. So
Yeah.
money always brings trouble. Yeah, well,
Except,
it depends
except
on
you
the
have to
money.
have it, or you have to have some. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't see how you get
exactly.
away from it. I don't see it. Maybe.
There's always going to be some sort of form of currency. I like to say it
Yeah.
that way,
Yeah.
where people trade and they say, "Oh, you have an apple, I got an orange. You're going to trade,
Yeah.
right?" And that's voluntary. There's people always going to do stuff like that. There's people always going to do wrong. There's people who are always going to do all sorts of things. The question is, do we give them power? That's why I focus on the status mindset. Most people already agree they own themselves. Most people already agree it's wrong to harm another person. So where
Mhm.
does it go wrong? It's because there's this contradiction in our own head, which is statism, a mindset which again most independent media doesn't talk about. But people like Larkin Rose, who I think deserves a lot more credit, who writes really extensive books, who wrote a movie based on this called The Jones Plantation. It's like
Love
his
that video,
videos,
by the way.
yeah, it's amazing. And it's
It's
like there's nothing of it.
simple. It's simple and easy.
It's unique. Like, is there any other movie that's really going into that message
Yeah.
in that detail? I
Yeah.
don't at the moment. I don't know any others. It's very new, but you know what? It's growing very fast. So
Yeah.
check out his work if you haven't. Larkin Rose, really good stuff. And Mark Pasio, he comes at it from a different angle, and you don't have to come at it from the same angle, right? You can reach the same conclusions, the same truths in different ways. Like you and I both agree we want freedom. We might have different ways of achieving it.
Of course. Of course. But I think that those different ways also make us stronger together.
Yes.
Because it opens up our eyes, and you've traveled a different road than I've traveled, and I've traveled a different road than you've traveled. And there's something in the middle is the right way. And if we can put our bias and our pride aside to sit down and have an open, decent conversation. I've said on my channel a million times, I would love nothing more than to find gay homesteaders to put on my channel or LBG. I'm in. Let's do it. Muslim, let's do it. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk about everything we agree about. Let's talk about how we're all human. Let's talk about those things. I mean, I would love it. I would welcome it every single day of the week, because they try with everything in their power to keep us separated and to get us dislike each other and get us to attack each other. Because as long as we're attacking each other, we're not attacking them. And I think we need to figure out a way to come together, and I think we can absolutely do it. I mean, Cory, you and I will probably disagree on a million things, but I bet we'd agree on 10 million.
I think what we're doing right now is naturally over time just going to keep bringing more people together, because I've already seen, like I said to you, people's reaction as they walk through a food forest, and they can have any mindset, but going in, it's like, wow, that to me is like one way you can open the door in someone's mind. It's about finding that way, right? It's like there's many people who want to be healthy, who want to lose weight, and there's not one way to do it. There's many different ways to do it, and many people want to claim there's one way. But is there? There's many different types of people. There's many different types of environments. We need to be able to look at all our options and what we can do as like the practitioner, like quite literally. If we want to help people, we want to heal the world. That's what we are. We're practitioners in that sense. But yeah, and so if you guys have any solutions that you want to share with me, feel free to email me. Like on theliberator.us, I have a bunch of solutions you can do online. So if you don't do things in person, feel like you can't do anything in person, please get involved with theliberator.us. I also have a weekly newsletter, and I share the events that are happening in real life and online. We do summits and we do conferences and, like I said, seminars and presentations, live streams like this. There's people who interview others. If you want, you can get interviewed. You want to share your experience and what you've gone through. I like to hear from people. I have a whole compilation of people sharing their experience, X-Status compilation. I didn't see that was out there on the internet, so I made one. You'll see there's people who are like 40 plus years in law enforcement who got out of it, and they're like, what was I doing all this time? I was following something. I thought I was doing the right thing. I ended up doing the wrong thing. I was promoting an immoral system. And for the longest time, they didn't understand that. So I have all of this on the record, and people can see it. Tons of documentaries. It's all there.
Yeah, I'm interested in a point there. You were talking about the police, and I'm a big believer in there's good and bad in everything. Yeah. There's great police officers and there's shitty police officers. Same with teachers, same with politicians, same with pretty much everything, right? Yeah. Out there. And I've had a lot of people talk to me about specifically schooling, about, hey, we need to take all of our kids out of the system. And we all need to go and homeschool. But there's part of me that thinks that we can't take the system back by doing that. What we have to do is infiltrate the schools. What we have to do is change the way they work. And what's your opinion on that?
I say just go private schools, like your own homeschooling. There's plenty of people who would be willing to do that. I've done several interviews with former school teachers and like David Rodriguez, who I know you're going to talk to as well. Yep. I mean, I think he's going to share the same view as me. He even runs an academy for people to do that. And he's going to help with Jim Gale in opening up his school so they can do the same thing. It's about creating the systems that we want, because those school systems are funded quite literally by the government. They're backed by violence. I don't want to support those systems. As it is, their money is being taken by them, by the government for these schools, and they don't even have kids in the schooling system,
Well, I think that's exactly what my question is that are we better off creating our own school systems?
Yeah,
I think so. But there's part of me, though, Bud, that thinks, and this is just me just talking off my sleeve, right? There's part of me that thinks that I'd be better off and I'm going to touch more and I'm going to impact more kids, right? I'm going to have more impact if instead what I do is take over the school board. Instead, what I do is I control the narrative at that school. If I go that route into the public school system and I say, hey, look, this is not going to be happening here anymore. We're going to teach freedom. We're going to teach self-thinking. We're going to get kids to do what they're great at. We're going to go down that route. I may be able to reach more.
But here's the question. Where are you going to get your funding from?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting question, but because you're obviously not going to get it from the state. So you guess you'd have to turn that school private. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe the answer is to go into each one of them and try to make each one of them private.
There you
I
go.
don't know. I'm just thinking off my cuff.
Well, either way, right? You're what you're doing is you're bringing it back down to nature where it should be. The parents are more directly involved. The kids are getting more like individualized treatment. The same way you can look at a hospital and you can look at all these hospital systems. And you're like, why isn't it individualized? Why are these patients treated like a number line? You can look at all these systems that be, and they're all somewhat failing in their own way, and they all can kind of relate to that notion of they're not natural. Like we've been so displaced from who we are. Um, that's at least how I look at it, right? So you wanted my opinion on that. That's how I look at it. Do everything we can to make it voluntary, to make it all individualized, where people get the care that they want. And that's the truth. I don't think all these moms going to school boards and yelling at the school board is going to help
No.
when there's solutions that they can directly apply, such
Yeah.
as homeschooling, that they probably just never looked into. And there's homeschoolers everywhere. There's people who are setting up those systems. Dana Martin, I interviewed her. She is an author, best selling author for unschooling, radical unschooling. You can read her book. She goes into all these strategies and what you can do for your children. She's awesome, right? So it's like your kids can want to learn rather than being like, oh, I have to go to school. I have to learn this. Like, no, they can actually be excited to learn.
Yeah.
It's very different. Very different.
Yeah. Well, I'm just kind of trying to think on a big scale, how do we reach as many of them as I can reach? How can I make as big an impact as I can? Because I could build a school in my community tomorrow, and we have teachers in our community, right? And we could probably pull that off. But what those kids are going to be left with is a school of 12 or 14 or 37 kids, whatever it is. And they're going to go through that. But my ability to reach beyond that gets limited. And I'm just, what I was doing is just saying, I wonder how I could go about doing that to reach more, to have more impact.
I think like for what John and I are doing, John Peniel Chidester, he has a channel too. We're going to be going to the universities and talking to college kids. I think that's our best bet. I mean, this is our future. And these are the kids that are inspired and they have energy and they can do things. Rather than trying to change some 50-year-old people who are on the school board who are never going to listen to you, who are stuck in their ways, or trying to convince some 8-year-old kid who doesn't have a mind of his own, we can just affect the college-age kids who will be the soon teachers, who bring in the energy, who bring in the next generation, who can do a bunch of things. So for me, I think it's targeting that demographic instead and talking to the universities, talking to them, and then they get to their families. And then once you've reached the parents affect the new generation. So more about educating the parents and the
that's interesting. I would think you can make a bigger impact at a kindergarten, first grade, second grade level on the way somebody thinks and, on that initial set of programming, that comes down.
Yes, it gets there. I just don't think it's the first step.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to have to chew on that. That's interesting. It's an interesting point. Interesting.
Yeah. That's kind of how I would look at it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'll tell you my experience as I go through that because I want to reach them. I care for them. So I definitely will tell you my experience over time. I'll be journaling it. I'll be sharing on my channel.
Well, and I'll share with mine as we continue to take over the school board and we continue to go over those. And I don't know what the right answer is. We're just swinging. All we're doing swinging. But
no, it's it. Do whatever you feel is best in that moment, as long as you know what you're doing is right, right? Yeah. And that's the thing. Stand up for it.
Yeah. Well, we have the only school in anywhere that I'm aware of that refused to mandate anything.
Nice.
And they were threatened to lose all of their funding and stood their ground in the powers that be back down.
Very nice. Yeah, there you go.
So
all it takes is people, right? People can do anything.
I think that's ultimately the answer, right? It just takes a lot of us. And we've got to get up off the couch. We've got to get out from behind the computer. We've got to put action behind our thoughts.
Yeah.
And we have to be intentional in everything we do, right?
Less begging. Oh, I want a new politician. I want a new school board. More like direct. Like if I want to change school board, I apply to be on the school board, or you're doing it.
Right.
Yeah. Because the more you beg and the more you yell, I mean, it might just cause them to push away. I went to some of these school board meetings and they're yelling at them and they're like, oh, you got to do this. It's like, they're not listening. It's like talking to a wall. They don't want to listen. They just want to go home. It's like, I'm done with this.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're not going to make any ground there, but I think, controlling, if you could put 5 people on the school board, 5 of 6, you'd make a big dent.
What's your view on gold and silver? People stocking up right now on stuff like that.
Yeah. I'm a fan of both gold and silver. I own them both. But I'll tell you that if I had $50,000 that I was going to put into anything, I'd buy more dirt. That would be number one on my list. I'd rather have a sheet of plywood than $1. I'd rather have, all my equipment maintained and everything ready to go for the next 5 years than a bunch of money in the bank. And I come from that world, Cory. I mean, I worked in the financial world my whole career. I understand it really, really well.
Hmm.
And if you ask me how much money I have in the markets today, the answer is zero.
Gotcha.
So,
All right.
but I have lots of money in dirt.
All right.
Like
We could do some bartering too, right?
Right. I like that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think gold and silver is there, but I would not recommend anybody who's starting out on this journey to start there. Because I think there's other things that are way more important. I mean, I think being able to grow your own food, being able to raise your own animals, being able to put a roof over your head. Like, I've always found it absolutely crazy that someone would maintain a 30-year mortgage at a 5% interest rate and just keep that going and then go buy silver. Like, it makes no sense to me. I would pay all my debt off. I'd get free, man. I'd get all of those avenues of attack where they can come after me, and I would get them all gone, and I'd eliminate all that stroke, and I'd get my life simple. And then once your needs are met, I would head down that road. But I would not recommend anybody head there right away. I'd go at it the other way first, personally.
Yeah, that's good advice. There's a lot of people in Florida who are moving down here. A lot of people, like maybe too much for all the natives are like, get out of here. Yeah, a lot of them have questions like that.
Yeah.
I have a little gold, a little silver, still working toward the dirt.
I would put dirt at the top, but I would
What
also
type
put
of dirt?
Well, I mean, obviously, this gets into a big, long story on why I'm even in the state that I'm in, right? But, well, I mean, I think you have to look at your needs. I think you have to look at your threats. I think you have to look at growing season. I think you have to look at water. I think you have to look at proximity to population. I think there's a lot of things you need to look at. But wherever that needs and threat analysis leaves you, put a stake in the ground and buy some dirt, whatever, I mean, I'm not going to dictate that for anybody else, right? Because everyone else is going to look at that completely different. But I would absolutely do that. But I think I'd attack your debt. If someone who can't get the dirt yet, get your debt gone. It's so crazy. I've told people this story before. When I was working in the corporate world, to pay my monthly bills, I'm talking about just, the mortgage, the car payments, Susie's violin lessons and Johnny's, soccer, whatever, just to pay my basics, I needed to make $7,200 a month. That was my break-even point every single month. And I was a complete slave to the system. And, today I've got it down to about $800 because I fought the backside argument, right? I got rid of all my debt. I have no car payments. I have no mortgage. I have no light bill. I have no water bill. I have no sewer bill. I have none of those kinds of things. And so I would encourage people who can't strike at the dirt, get rid of that stroke, get rid of all that stuff, those carrots that are hanging over your head. I know it's hard. I know you want to go out and buy that new whatever. It feels good. Of course it feels good. Get rid of your debt.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, get rid of your debt. It's great advice.
All right. Yeah. I know my parents had to struggle with a mortgage for a while too. So
I did, but I was the typical American slave. My wife drove a BMW. I drove a Hummer. We had 2 car payments. I had a mortgage payment. I had credit card debt. The kids were in everything the kids wanted to be in. We were living that absolute traveled, went all over the place. And one day it just, then the next month you got to make it all again.
Yeah.
It's just a cycle that you'll never break until someday you just stop it and say, man, the first step to getting out of this hole is I really got to quit digging it. Or I'm never going to get out. And I saved my money for 9 years to pull it all off. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't go to Starbucks. I didn't go on vacation. I didn't do anything for 9 years. And if I can do it, I'm telling you, anybody else can do it.
Yeah. Tag knows my situation more than most and understands why I don't have the dirt yet. He's been my biggest encouragement and go-to for information.
Yeah, you can do it. You just got to want it more than you want Starbucks. All it is.
By the way, so I'll mention another solution here. I have a networking page on the liberator.us where you can send me, if you want, like just the general location of where you are, like a town or city area. Let's say you're in Canada, you can say east, west. If you want to cover a certain part of the nation, I have contacts there, both in real life and online, different servers, Discord servers, Telegram. So if you want to connect with other people, there's a lot of avenues just there on that page alone. And I just started the real life section on that page. And so we already got a bunch of contacts on there. But if you want, you can also be part of that. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing you have to do. Like if you want to put your name on there and like your email address, you don't have to put your name. It's an email address or a way for people to contact you and location. You can just network with some people who go on the website. I'm trying to make it basically, just so you know, a one-stop hub for pretty much everything freedom or Literally, like there's everything there I can think of. There's testimonies and interviews, activism, events, networking. There's even a quiz that we coded with somebody. So you can take that quiz and challenge yourself. The long version is 95 questions. So if you really want to challenge your own philosophy and freedom, I encourage you take it. I'm going to make a video version soon of the quiz as well, in case you don't want to actually click the button and read for yourself. I'll make it easier for you. But there's also a short version of that quiz. It's only about like 10 questions. So you can take that one too, just as good. Just the one that goes longer goes into scenarios and what would you do? And it's really, really unique. I don't think there's anything out there that has done that. I've also made a game show. So I'm trying to create things that have never been created before. That's my role here. Like I'm a young person, this generation. I'm going to change this generation. I'm going to do what independent media should have done 20, 30 years ago. No offense. I don't know how you feel about this, Tag. I mentioned it in my speech, maybe a little too much. I was like, why isn't InfoWars doing this? Why isn't these big independent media doing this? Why haven't they done this 30 years ago? Instead of complaining and just getting supplements and people buying more things, why don't they actually like create action, encourage their listeners to go to their neighbors and talk to them? Like if we had that, I feel like so much would be done. Like I straight up went to the Jehovah Witness route of like, I'm going to go to my neighbors and knock on their doors and share the information with them. How many people would be willing to do that?
Not many.
So like I'm pretty dedicated. You know what I mean? I'm going to make it happen. If there's change that needs to be done, I'm sick of independent media not doing it. And I'm going to be trying new things ever continually.
Yeah.
What I do find to be essential is having that piece of land where I can record, where I can do events, where I can inspire people. And that's why I want to do it. I want to make a little paradise on earth. I'm not going to share exactly how I'm going to do it yet. But once I have that vision, which I kind of already do, I'm going to share it with everybody and we're going to make it happen. You know, just a matter of time.
Yeah, Life of Mike and Jen said kind of like Tag's quiz. And what they're talking about is we created what we call the ungovernable score calculator. I have a buddy that's is a whiz at Excel. And so we talked about mortgage, car payments, alternative energy, community, health, habits.
I can share that with people on the quiz page if you want.
Yeah. If you go to lifedonefree.com, my website, you can download it for free. It's just on there. I don't ask for an email address or anything, but you're welcome to it. But anyway, it's pretty cool. And it spits out a score at the end and tells you whether you're an indentured servant or you're free. But
that's literally what my quiz does. It says, are you 100% abolitionist? Or are you not? You know, abolitionist is like another way to say freedom loving person nowadays. I call myself an abolitionist. I don't usually go by titles, but when people introduce me in interviews, they're like, this is a modern abolitionist. John is like, he's the youngest abolitionist I know. That's how he introduces me every time, everywhere I go.
But I think it's awesome. I think you're doing good work. And, the advice that I'd give you, Cory, is, keep your mind wide open. Just keep it wide open because there's just a lot, that's out there. And I'm proud of you and I'm proud of what you're doing. I am. And I know it's hard, but everything in the world stacked against you, but it doesn't matter, right? Doesn't matter.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And we'd love to have you out at the community sometime. It's a really, really cool experiment. Everyone that comes down here says, I can't explain it. That's what they always say. Like, I don't know how to put this into words. But if you dream it, you can absolutely go build it. And that little piece of heaven you're talking about's not just a reality. It's probable if you just put one foot in front of the other. I know it.
Yeah. Basically, I want to do what Jim's doing, but on the western side of Florida. So if anybody's also in Florida, reach out to me.
Yeah. By the way, someone asked what part of Florida.
West Central Florida, around that area. That's where we're planning to build something other than what Jim has going. And I think his team is going to support me and help me in doing that too, because they want to have multiple locations. They're already looking at other pieces of land. We want to have multiple places where we can do events. Jim is about 3 hours from me. It's not bad. I like going over there. I've gone there several times. And so like, I'm cool with that, but I also want to have my own little place where I can do a lot of stuff. I'm just like him. I'm a content creator. I'll record myself every step of the progression. I'll do exactly what Jim did. Cause honestly, it inspires other people, inspires myself. It gets us keep going.
I struggle with that. I'm like, I could film me doing this right here and it'd take me 5 hours, or I could knock it out in 45 minutes. Which one do I want to do? I struggle.
Got to keep it quick and short sometimes. Yeah, I know. I'm the same way. Yeah.
Well, we built, I don't know if you know this or not, but me and my wife built our house and we built the barns and we put the fencing in and we built, we have 3 water sources. We built them all, solar system. We built ourselves, everything we've done ourselves. And so there's a lot to do. So yeah, I struggle with filming enough of it. My wife's always on me saying, you got to film some of it. I know, you know,
Yeah.
but it's cool. Well, bud, we've been at this an hour and 18 minutes, but I would love for you to go down the run one more time and tell everybody where to find you.
Sure. So I want everybody to go to deliberator.us because they can get involved with that. It's a project I create for everybody. A lot of the projects that I create are for everybody. They're not just about me. So that's why when you go to deliberator.us or nita.one, nita.one, they don't really have me on it. Like I have some of my videos, like sometimes, but I showcase a lot of what other people are doing too, because those projects are for everybody. I'm trying to create massive community like things so we can create that movement I speak of, that greater effect, that aggregating effect, rather than it just being about me. It's not about me, it's about the message, right? So my channel, however, is Cory Nature's the Answer. If you look up Cory Nature's the Answer on anything, you should be able to find me. I'm on Rumble, Rockfin, BitChute, Brighteon, all the platforms. You should be able to find it, Odyssey, right? And you'll find I do video content pretty much every day. I'm posting shorts, 1 minute format, 10-minute format. I have several seminars. So every format you can think of, it's all there.
Yeah, super cool. And I want you to know, Cory, you know, if any of my community videos, because I do a lot of videos on community, how it works, the interlocking circles of community, that use any of it you want, anytime you want. I don't mind
Okay.
in the least. And for everybody else, I'm tagged from Life Done Free. I have a YouTube channel called Life Done Free, Facebook page called Life Done Free, website called Life Done Free. That's about it.
Awesome.
It's good. Yeah. Any parting words you want to give us, Cory, or you want to give anybody hope?
Yeah. Well, I did publish a book recently, which is focused on the ancient Chinese philosophy of Taoism. You can check that out. It's very good for anybody who's new. So if you ever want to give a gift this holiday season, since it's almost Christmas, and people like to read books, you can always consider giving them a book that comes from a different perspective that can help open their eyes toward the end, because it really approaches it from a very nice, simplistic point of view that I think most people can be like, yeah, this makes sense. It's just going over a philosophy from the East that we weren't taught, especially in the Western world. But you'll be surprised how profound it is. The Tao Te Ching, which this book is based on, is older than the Bible, and it's the second most translated work in the entire world, next to the Christian Bible. Yet most Christians and most people in the West have no clue about it. And it's so simple and profound, it's poetry that a kid could read it. There's not many translation errors or issues in it, and I would consider it the first book ever on freedom and liberty, like really nailing it down. There's not really anything controversial or hard to interpret about it. There's plenty of great content creators, and they all sound like they're liberty-like people. It's like they don't know that we exist, but they sound like us. It's pretty crazy. So definitely something to get into if you want to share a gift with people who are totally closed-minded. It's just a way to potentially open the door.
Yeah, you know, Cory, I've got a social media platform called freesteading.com. And it's just a bunch of like 20,000 homesteaders on there. Feel free to go on there and post your book.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's like homesteading, but freesteading.
There you go.
You go there, post away, man. And I'll go if and they'll notify me. I'll get in behind and try to say, hey guys, do this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, awesome. It got to top release on Amazon because I had a lot of people supporting me just in the neighborhood, neighbors, people like the communities that we're building here is awesome. And I hope you guys can have the same thing. I want you guys to have the same thing. I know you can. So we've been talking about that. So if you ever need help, like I said, anything technological, reach out to me. I can help you with content creation. Or if you're a writer, definitely send us an article and get involved. Thank you so much, Tag, for having me on and sharing everything with your chat and your channel. I love what you're doing.
Yeah, and Cory, I'd like to do this again sometime. You know, maybe we'll get 4 or 5 of us together who, are kind of working on this path, and you know, maybe we can, do something in that realm. But so let's stay in touch, and let's do another one sometime soon.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree.
All right, cool.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep. Good night, everybody. Go live free.